Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
This is a bonus episode.
Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our next guest will share how a poor kid from the housing projects makes it to corporate boardroom by following 7 pathways to success and fulfillment. Welcome, Steve White.
Hello, Dr. Frances. Thank you so much for having me today.
I've given our audience such a brief bio because you have such an extensive bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your journey?
Great. As I said again, I'm so glad to be here with you today. My story really starts in the housing projects of Indianapolis. And I was the perfect candidate, Dr. Frances, to be a victim. Single mother, 8th grade education. She was a high school janitor for 35 years, but worked in cleaning motel rooms for quite some time. And she raised 4 boys by herself. So the journey starts. I was born in Florida. She decided to divorce my father when I was about 10 years old. And I must tell you, that was not a popular decision with the 4 boys, particularly me being the oldest, because I loved my dad. He certainly had his issues and challenges, but a lot we just didn't know. So she picks up her 4 kids, moved from Florida to Indianapolis, where she has a brother, to create a new life and a different life for her family. And her first job, she was cleaning motel rooms. And that's motel with an M. Not H as in a hotel. There's no spa, there's no elevator, there's no in-room dining. This is the place where you pull your car up, you see your door, and you go in. So we're talking about the bottom of the bottom. She was cleaning motel rooms. And while her talents certainly were greater than cleaning motel rooms, it was at that point I started learning those early lessons around hard work, family, commitment, teamwork, giving your best, and also having a great attitude. Now, she had all the odds against her, but she got up every morning, focused on being the best she could be. And she would take us along on the weekends because she couldn't afford a babysitter. So when we weren't at school, we would go to that motel and help her clean those rooms. And that's where it starts for me. And that's where my journey really begins, where I understand the value of making a difference. And I'm inspired by the quote, "The 2 most important days in your life," it's a Mark Twain quote, "is the day you're born, and the second is when you know why." Now, while I didn't know it at the time, Dr. Frances, I was clearly watching my mother living her purpose and why, which was to create a better opportunity for 4 young boys, that they would grow into grown men and make a difference in the lives of others. Fast forward, I get a scholarship to go to Indiana University. People say, "How did you pick Indiana University?" Well, guess what? Indiana University picked me. That was the only school that came calling. College did not become a reality until I was like a junior in high school. Fast forward, I do 30 plus years of corporate America. My last job at Comcast, I was president of Comcast West, responsible for $18 billion in revenue, leading 30,000 teammates across the western part of the United States, responsible for all of our cable operations. And my new job, I'm president and special counsel, supporting the CEO of Comcast. I'm married. My wife is Barbita, and we have a little miracle baby, Stephen Andrew White II. We call him Stevie. And Dr. Frances, we share the same birthday, December 18th. So if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. So certainly my life's journey has had a lot of success, but there have also been failures. There's also been heartaches, but that's what makes a rich life, is you go through the challenges of life. And when you come out on the other end, you're still standing, you're still smiling. That's a life well lived.
You talked about your mother's why. Steve, talk about your why.
My why really was revealed to me through adversity and challenge. When I left Indiana University, I joined a company called American Hospital Supply. Like all of their new recruits, you start off as a salesperson, So I moved to the Northeast. I was rookie of the year. I was the top quota breaker. I immediately get promoted. I moved back to Chicago. I'm at the head office running one of our marketing groups. And then I get promoted again. I'm 23 years old, the youngest sales manager in the company's history. I was leading a group of men and women in the state of Michigan. And so everything that I did to get to that point was about what I did. I didn't realize once you start leading men and women, it's not about you anymore. It is about them, and you serve them. And that's how you get success. That's how you get rewarded through their success. I didn't understand that. I thought if I just totally focused on me, work hard, put in the hours, that great things would happen for me. And guess what, Dr. Francis? About a year in the job, I got fired. Now, while at the time I didn't think it was a good thing, I didn't think it was a great life lesson, I was just disappointed and hurt. But rightly so, I got fired because I was not serving my men and women. I was not focused on their development, their growth. I didn't realize that's where the joy comes from. And I realized that I enjoyed working for people, working and leading men and women. But that day, a gentleman by the name of Darnell Martin, who worked at the same company, just in another division, an African-American leader, called me up and said, Steve, I see more in you than you see in yourself and that others see in you. I think there's something special about what you can help our company do. So I'm going to give you another opportunity. But if you lead the way you've been leading, this is not going to work out. But I'm going to show you how a leader serves his team. And through that, he or she will get their rewards. So I moved to Chicago. I learned under Darnell Martin. He gives me a safe environment. I learn and grow. And from that day on, I realized my purpose. God had given me the ability to motivate and inspire men and women. That was going to be my why. How do I create a table of prosperity for as many people as possible? And so the value of your fruit, if the fruit only grows on your tree, it dies when you die. But if you plant and grow fruit on many, many trees, even after you're long gone, your fruit will still continue to live on. And that was a very valuable lesson. And through that adversity, through that challenge, my why of serving others and creating that table of prosperity for others was birthed. Has it been an easy journey? No. Have I failed a few times? Absolutely. But having a clear purpose for your life puts you on the right path to success.
Fill in the blank. Thank you, pandemic, because
it slowed us down. It paused us. It created a level of vulnerability for all of us. People often ask me, Steve, why did the George Floyd murder on May 25th, 2020, why was that such a catalyst when, as an African American, we've seen this movie before? And I believe we were all at home. We all thought we were in control of our lives. And the pandemic showed us all, if you were aware, that we were not in control and we were feeling very vulnerable. And when we see this man on the ground, totally helpless and no regard for his life, it hit us all in a way that made us all feel that could have been me. I thought I was in control of my life and I'm not. So the pandemic, thank you for slowing us down to focus on what's really important. Let me give you another example with that. Everyone calls this unemployment and employment issue called the Great Resignation. I call it the Great Reset because all that's doing is you're saying life is short. And if I'm working in an environment that I'm miserable and I have a boss that does not support me and I'm working for a company that has no vision, no purpose, why am I doing this? And so moms and dads and young people are all stepping back saying, how do I want to live my life? And maybe what I'm doing today is not why I've been placed on this earth. So I believe more people are facing that second question, why have I been placed on this earth? And that's what I believe is driving the Great Reset. And that's what the pandemic has done. Slowed us down, made us more vulnerable, and allowed us to think more about how we're living our lives.
let's talk about what problem exists in the world today that you'd like to solve.
I call it opportunity. People say, Steve, why did you write the book? because you don't go from the housing projects of Indianapolis to the corporate boardroom and be an executive at one of the top 20 companies in America by yourself. And the number of men and women, Dr. Francis, that have given me a hand up, I didn't say hand out, hand up, which is an opportunity to display my talents. And so what better way than to write a love letter for all those men and women by writing a book and hopefully share it with others so they will be impacted in a positive way. So that is, I believe, the biggest challenge is when you don't have an opportunity to succeed. That's where the challenge. I'll give you an example. There was a famous study done in 1968. I write about it in the book, where there's 60 kids in this school. They group them in threes of 20. They went to the teachers and said, this group of 20, they're special. They're unique. They have these incredible gifts and talents. Now, Dr. Francis, these 20 kids were picked at random. There was no test done. They were picked at random. And do you know those 20 children scored the highest score because the teachers went in with an expectation that they were unique and special. And so therefore they were treated a certain way and they were given an opportunity to really display their talent. And that is a clear example. When we give people an opportunity to be their best, they will shine. And unfortunately, there are not more Steve Whites in corporate America. Not that I'm unique or special. I just had a unique opportunity and a number of men and women willing to give me a hand up. How do we ensure more get this opportunity? So therefore, in boardrooms, there are more people of color sitting in those critical positions.
Talk about your siblings. How did they fare?
I have 3 brothers. They are all doing very well. I have one brother, Linton, who lives in California. He's the CFO of a major healthcare company. My youngest brother, Anthony, works for Comcast as well. He's a safety manager. And my next youngest brother, Keith, lives in Indianapolis, where my mom lives. He followed my mom. He was a high school janitor for some 20 years and just recently retired. And now he's doing a few other things, but also being close to my mother and supporting her. She's still alive. She's now 81 years old. She'll be 82 this year, still feisty and independent and living by herself. And she continues to serve as a role model to us all.
That's a blessing. That is a blessing.
Absolutely.
Talk about your book.
The book is called Uncompromising. It's available on February 22nd for broad release. It is now available for pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. If you want to learn more, please go to my website, stevewhitespeaks.com. You can learn about the book. You can follow me on social media. You can see what I'm up to and all of that. But the title is called Uncompromising. And most people will say, well, wait a minute, Steve, in a world that thrives off of compromise, right? Watch Washington, D.C. In a world that needs compromise, how can you come out with a book called Uncompromising? Well, I go back to that Mark Twain quote, the 2 most important days of your life, the day you're born, the second is when you know why. And that's where uncompromising comes in. When you find out why you've been placed on this earth, when you find out what your passion is, what you're good at, what you would essentially do for free, that is what you're ruthless on. That is what you're uncompromising. Because I promise you in life, you will run into naysayers. You will run into people say, why are you even thinking about doing that? You can't go do that. That's impossible. That's when you generate your greatest resolve. And so that's why the book is called Uncompromising, finding your fight, living your purpose. And once you do, that is what you're ruthless. That is what you're uncompromising in your pursuit. And in the book, Dr. Francis, I talk about 7 pathways that have worked for me that I believe if you employ, that you can live a life, impact, and legacy. The first pathway is certainly finding your fight. And people say, how do you find your fight? Through reflection, but reflect on what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And what would you do for free if you had to? And if you can find the answer to those 2 or 3 questions, you are now on the path to finding your purpose, your fight. The second pathway is talking about how do you stay focused on the real prize? Because there are distractions. I love this phrase, look over here, but don't look over here because here's the real issue. Certainly the George Floyd thing was horrible. It's tremendously unfair and inhumane. But guess what, Dr. Francis? What's even more inhumane? The number of young people that go to school every day in some of our urban centers that are not being educated. That's cruel. So while the George Floyd situation is important that we need to focus on, but every single day we have young people that are not being educated. That's what I mean, focusing on the real prize. Don't be distracted. Let's stay focused on the real prize as you pursue your fight. Number 3, live your life as a learning lab. Life is about growth. I talk about in the book, my stepfather, who was 75, who's no longer with us. Dr. Francis, he was taking Spanish lessons at age 75. So no matter how old you are, life is a learning lab. Continue to find ways to grow. Number 4, think and act like a business. That means be objective. Own your attitude and effort, because those are the only 2 things you can control. Number 6 is learn to navigate uncertainty, because success is not a straight road. It is a very crooked road. And then finally, and very importantly, commit to road dog relationships. Where I grew up, road dog is a very complimentary term that says, you've got my back, but not just telling me what I want to hear. You're going to give me tough love when I need it. You're going to challenge me, and you're going to encourage me when necessary. That's what I call a road dog. So I talk about these 7 pathways that have worked for me, that help me live a life of legacy and impact. And I'm not done yet. I'm still a young man, so there's still more to go.
Talk about being a Black man raising a Black son in America, and what conversation are you having with your son?
It is hard. And the first thing I had to learn, Dr. Francis, when I was growing up, I mentioned I had a single mother. There was one sheriff in the house. This was not a Democratic household. This was not, Steve, what do you think? It was, she was the boss and she ran it her way. Now, I'm thankful for that, because she was trying to be a dad and a mom, so I got it. But clearly today, I can't raise my child like that. It has to be a relationship. I have to talk to him. I have to find ways to nurture him. I can't just tell him to do things because mama said or dad said. I have to be able to lead him in a way. And so it's very difficult. But here's how my wife and I have done, and I give her a lot of credit. The first thing we do is we make sure that we create a safe environment for him, that he could tell us anything. We talk about no secrets in our household. As a little boy, we talked about we never keep secrets from each other. So that's number 1. So if he's going through something, that's a challenge we need to know. The second thing is we pour into him books. Like, for instance, one of his favorite books is all the Black people that have created remarkable inventions in America. So we want him to see people that look like him in a very positive light, so no one can shape his self-esteem. He's building that at home in a way that he understands. Just because you might be different than the people over here, you're special, you're unique. God made you the way he wanted to make you, because he's got a very special plan for your life. That's the second thing. The third thing is we try to bring him along slowly. Where parents do not believe giving it to them all early on so they could see the world through old eyes. We want him to continue to look at life through young eyes, aspiration and laughter and joy, because there will be plenty of time for him to learn some of the challenges in the world. But let's let him mature and help him, do that. So this is all about developing him. I'll give you one last example. We're creating expectations for him. So no matter what he faces, Condoleezza Rice said at a speech, her father told her, if someone does not want to sit by you, let them move. Don't you move. You are who you are. You're special. Don't you move. If they don't want to sit by you, let them move. And that comes from setting a level of high expectations. Quick story. I went to Harvard Business School about 5 years ago for a training program. I called my wife up and I said, hey, what's Stevie's size? And she gave me the size. But something dawned on me. Said, Steve, why don't you buy him multiple shirts and sweatshirts, but all different sizes? So from the time he was 5 years old, even up to now, every year he has a different Harvard shirt on because I bought different sizes. So as he goes through life, he's going to always have a Harvard sweatshirt or T-shirt or rain jacket that he's going to have on. And it's not so much about going to Harvard. It's about higher education has been set as an expectation for him. So when he runs into those things that he will run into, those challenges, he's sure of who he is. The expectations have been set, and no one can define that for him. So when he gets punched in the mouth, he's going to dust himself off and get up. That's how I believe we start to raise young, healthy Black boys and raise them into men and young girls. And then as they get older and as they get more mature, then we can have more intelligent conversations around when there's unequalness or there's lack of justice or people are not given an opportunity. But he can learn from that, but it does not impact who he is.
Talk about that defining story or moment as you're writing the book that just really, you were like, I can't write this story without including what?
My mother's voice. I had a writer that helped me, Stephen Caldwell, who's excellent. He helped me write the book. And we wrote the book during 2020, and we would spend 4 or 5 hours together every week. And so one time we got my mother on the phone for a couple hours, and she just shared stories. And to have her authentic voice as part of the book, and my wife, Barbita, to have their authentic voice as part of the book, because we often see ourselves one way, others see us sometimes a different way. And for them to share their perspective and their story was just so important to me, to have their authentic voice as part of the story.
I want you to have a monologue, Steve. I want you to name this person, living or not, and they have inspired you so much. They've impacted your life. Name the person, and what are you saying to that person?
Boy, there's so many, and I can go on and on. Dr. William Wiggins, he's no longer with us. He was a professor at Indiana University where I got my degree. He taught African American studies. And so it was the first time that I truly learned about our journey as a people and the impact that we had on this country, whether it's in arts, whether it's in music, whether it's in sports, whether it's in education. It was just an awakening for me to really come to grips with who I am. And it inspired me to say, I can do that as well. I can go out here and make a difference. I have control over this. But also, Dr. Francis, he would invite us into his home, other young Black men like me. He would invite us into his home, and to see a home with a husband, a loving wife, with a child, where we would sit at dinner. And it was not about what we were eating. This was a table. If you thought you were going to get up in 20 minutes, you were at the wrong house. It was 90 minutes, 120 minutes of conversation over coffee, over food. And so not only was he feeding me around who I am as a Black person, he was also feeding into me, what is it to be a man? What is it to be a loving husband? What is it to be a father? And to get double helpings of that was just an experience that I can't imagine. And so he's no longer with us today. He died 4 years ago, and I was able to attend his funeral. But it reminds me, Dr. Francis, there's a song that goes like this. It says, you die twice. The first time you die is when they put you in the ground. The second time is when the last person mentions your name. And here I am years later, still talking about Dr. William Wiggins and the impact he had on me. That's what we should all strive for. Long after we're gone, there are people still mentioning our name in a positive way. Now, I could go on, and there have been so many others, but Dr. Wiggins really stands out at a critical moment for me when I was 17, 18 years old, really trying to figure out who I am as a person, as a man, as a citizen. Boy, he came in at the perfect time for me.
There's so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
Well, Amazon is an example. So I don't know about your house, but Amazon is prevalent in our house. And but here's a company, I feel, that truly listen to their customer. And in every relationship, Dr. Francis, whether it's a personal relationship, a business relationship, a supervisor to employee, at the end of the day, all we really want is to be heard. Even if we don't get what we want, as long as we know that we had an audience that was really focused on listening to me. And that's what I believe Amazon did. I didn't know if I ordered a book that I wanted it that day or the next morning. I didn't know that. But when they started giving to me, I said, I really like this. I didn't know that I wanted a plethora of options when I'm looking for something like face masks. They gave it to me. And then when I don't like it, I want to return it. There's no issues. They're very focused. And so it's no surprise to me that they're one of the most valuable companies in America. Now, think what you want about the owner. He certainly has, his unique challenges. But as an enterprise, their ability to disrupt multiple industries because they probably listen to customers better than anyone else.
Advice you wish you had followed.
You are more shaped by the men and women, boys and girls that you hang out with than you realize. There were people in my life I should have exited long time ago. And so if somebody says, Steve, give me a piece of advice, let's go back to a younger you when you're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and you're in the housing projects trying to figure out what's next. What advice? Be focused on who you surround yourself with. And I was blessed at Indiana University. I call my road dogs. There are 3 gentlemen that are still with us. Unfortunately, 4 are no longer with us. But I remember their focus on study and education. Even when I wanted to go out and hang out and party, the fact that they were going to a library on a Friday night and said, look, we're going to pay ourselves first before we go have a good time. We're going to do the homework. So Monday, we're ready before we go out. Just having those kind of role models around you make a significant difference. I tell people often, Dr. Francis, in my lifetime, there are only 12 decisions. I counted them that truly mattered. And more than half of them have to do with relationships. My relationship with God, my faith, that was obviously a critical decision. Who I decided were going to be my friends, who I decided to marry. And I married Barbita White, and we've been married a long, long time. So think about, of those 12 decisions, 3 or 4 are just around who you decide to hang out with. And so when you can get those big decisions right, your chances of success go up. But that's the big piece of advice is be careful who you pick as your friends. Because as my mother says, it says a lot about you who you spend your time with.
Steve, you are dropping some major value bombs here, and I so appreciate you. What is the best decision you made as a leader?
It came through pain. There's a theme here. Life lessons tend to come through pain and adversity. I remember I had a big job, my first big job in the cable industry. I worked at Colgate-Palmolive, and I got recruited to the cable industry. I moved to Chicago. And our company at the time, it was called Telecommunications Incorporated, TCI. At the time, it was the largest cable company in America. And we were struggling a little bit. So the company made the decision, and I went along and said, look, 10% of our employees, there are long-term employees, they've tapped out on their salary range. So let's not give them a salary increase this year. We'll give everyone else, and we'll tell those folks, thank you for your service, but we're not going to give you an increase because the company is struggling and all of that. Sound like a good plan to me. I follow along. I'm a good soldier, and I make it happen. And Dr. Francis, I remember one of my long-term employees, he was a technician, pulls me aside and says, Steve, I think you're a fine young man. I actually think you have skill sets. I think you have the talent to really be a major player in this company, in this industry. But listen, if you ever do these 2 things again, you're not going to be successful. I sat back and said, what are those 2 things? He said, you never disrespect your employees, because that's what I did. I said, although you have put years and years in this company, I'm going to sacrifice you and you're not going to get a raise this year. That's disrespect. I'm not saying you got to love me. I'm not saying you got to give me everything that I want. But if you ever disrespect your employees again, I will do everything I can to make sure you're not susceptible. And the second thing is when you're leading men and women, particularly large frontline groups, your job is to make sure my W-2 grows every year. That's what a good leader does. You allow me to work in an environment where I can be the best that I can be and I can care for my family. Because when you help me do that, that gets my son closer to college. That maybe helps my mother retire sooner. So those are the two things, young man, that if you never do anything else, don't you ever forget those two things. And some 30 years later, I'm sharing it with you because I never forgot. That was a horrendous mistake, which then turned me into making decisions going forward. Because you said, what are the best decisions? The best decision is always putting my employees in the center of the table and thinking from their perspective. One of the things that I do in my boardroom, I always have two empty chairs. One chair is for the customer and the other chair is for my employees. And so I tell my teammates, when we're sitting in this room, I want you to envision every decision we make, there's a customer listening and an employee listening. And if we feel comfortable making that decision, knowing that they're listening to everything we say, that tells me we're on the track for some good decisions. But if we ever feel uncomfortable that they might hear this, then that should be a signal to us that we're not on the right track.
The word is listening. What is that resounding sound or message that your generation is saying that we should be listening to?
Just because I'm different, just because I don't follow your specific rules, does not mean I don't share the same values that you share, that I don't have the same ambitions. I just come in a different package. I just look different. When I was growing up, I would never wear a hoodie. My mother would kill me if I went outside with a hoodie. But just because a young person wears a hoodie, that does not make them any less ambitious, does not make them any less focused. They're just expressing themselves. So just because they don't look the way I look or the way I act or how I think or how I dress, let's not judge people before we even got to know them. I think that's what the younger generation is really saying. Just listen to me. Just because I look different, just because I wear different clothes, just because I wear a hoodie does not mean that I don't share the same values, the same work ethic, the same commitment, the same desires that you did when you were younger or even as you're older.
The word is legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
I'm better because of him. Let me share a quick story with you. As you can tell, I love stories. Every day of our life, let's say you live to 100 years old and you're in good health. That's what we're all striving for. Every day, Dr. Francis, we're going to interact with 4 or 5 people that we don't know. It might be at a Starbucks counter. It might be in the grocery store line. It might be somebody helping us fix our car, whatever. You're going to meet 5 or 6 new, unique people every single day. So when your life is done, all of those people now are sitting in a stadium and they're saying one of 3 things. Dr. Francis, Dr. Francis. And they're like pounding, yay, 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 yeah. They're excited. Or they're saying, Dr. Francis, blank, 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 blank. Or worse, Dr. Francis, they're saying nothing. That is a life that has had no impact. We should all be striving to have a stadium full of people when our time comes. And they're saying, Dr. Francis, and they're sharing stories of how in a small moment you impacted them because you encouraged them, or you said something nice to them, or you made an investment in them, or you gave them a warm hug, whatever it might be. People remember those things. And that's a legacy when your fruit is hanging off multiple trees. So long after you're gone, people are still picking your fruit. And that is a visual that I hope all of our listeners will get and understand. And the capabilities are there for all of us in our own unique way to make a difference. And think about a world where everybody's focused on serving others. That is a very special place.
Talk about mental illness and business.
Well, it's a fine line between going off the rails. Maybe that's not fair, but to be not sure. And mental illness comes, from a lot of different places. I think it goes back to we gotta look at everyone as an individual. We cannot look at people with one broad brush. One of the most frightening things that I see every day, and I try to explain it to my son, I don't know if you see it where you live. You come up to these intersections and there are these people, homeless people, they're asking for money. They've got bags of clothes or whatever. Your instinct immediately is to say, how come they're not working when they look healthy, right? They look healthy. I mean, we're not talking about people that are in wheelchairs. We're talking about grown men and women walking up and down. And it's so easy to say, is it that unfortunate? Why aren't they working? And then the number of men and women that are military that have been impacted in a very unique way, I think is something that we've got to take very, very serious. And I think the way you deal with that is you deal with everyone as an individual. And I tell my son, every time we see someone, we can't look at them as one brush. They're all individuals and everybody's going through their own individual situation.
What is your zone of genius?
I believe now that's a question we're always taught by our mother and others. You never talk about yourself. But I think this ability to inspire men and women, I think that's God's gift to me, is being able to see what I like to see, the whole playing field evolve in front of me. It's like a slow motion play, to be able to see situations and then be able to share that with people in an inspiring way that might help them if they're off the wrong track to get back on the right track. So I think it's this ability to inspire, motivate men and women. At least that's what I believe. And that's why I wrote the book and all of these other things. It's about giving back. Because, Dr. Francis, when you write a book, unless you're John Grisham or someone like that, nobody's getting rich here. This is all about a love affair. And this is hopefully my life's journey is about inspiring others.
What is your weakness as a leader?
Well, I've got a big heart. When you watch your mother come home every night, she worked 2 jobs, and being the oldest of 4 boys, I was left many times with the responsibility to get my brothers ready for bed, fed, and all of that. So when she came home, and so where we live, you had multiple locks on the door. You didn't have one lock. There was not a fancy alarm system. You had deadbolts and all of this. And so when she would come home, I would have to go, and it would take me sometimes 20 to 30 seconds to unlock all the locks. And Dr. Francis, as soon as she would come through the door, I could immediately tell what kind of day she had. And if she had a bad day, it usually revolved around a boss or a manager or supervisor treating her with disrespect. And I could see the day she came home in a great mood, it was tied to someone affirming her value in all of this. And so my heart is so big for frontline men and women that if I'm not careful, I cannot be objective. And so I have to challenge myself. Even the boards that I serve on 3 company public boards: Hormel Foods, W.W. Granger out of Chicago, and Shaw Communications, which is a big media company in Canada. The common theme about all 3 of those companies are 80% of their employees are frontline hourly people. And so when I'm sitting in the boardroom, I have to catch myself because I'm like, look, we need to take care of these people. But I have to always step back and look objectively to say what's happening. But when you see that and you grow up in an environment where you're living check to check, and those decisions are sometimes life impacting, sometimes it can make you a little less objective. And I always have to catch myself.
Steve, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
That's such a good question. I've never heard that. Steve, why do you feel that it's your responsibility to make a difference in other lives? Because I talk about it in the book, I call it my Black exhaustion. Being Black in corporate America, when oftentimes you're the only person in the room, is exhausting. When Black issues come up, they all look to you for the answer. That's exhausting. When George Floyd happens, everybody's like, oh, I had no idea this was going on. That's exhausting. It's not my job to educate you. But then on the flip side, Dr. Francis, as an African-American man, as my mother taught me, when you make it, when you've made something of yourself, it is your responsibility to go back and bring others along. Well, guess what? That's exhausting too. So why do you feel the need to make a difference in others' lives? And the way I would answer is only through God, that I'm not sitting with this level of arrogance to think that I got here all by myself. That is a very arrogant feeling, is to believe I did this all by myself. Certainly, I met the opportunity. I took advantage of it. I worked my behind off. But to believe I got here by myself would be very arrogant. So your true responsibility is to ensure that others come along and they make it. And you're in a unique position to make that happen, because maybe the boardroom you sit in, maybe your ability to get a book published, whatever it is, that's your responsibility.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Rapid Round of Fun. I'm going to give you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the rapid round of fun?
I'm nervous, but ready.
Your favorite color?
Blue.
Your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Your ideal car?
Porsche. Convertible top.
Your first job?
Cleaning motel rooms.
The last movie you saw?
Godfather 1 and 2.
You relax doing what?
Listening to my son laugh.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Luther Vandross. I know I'm old school, but they bless me, God. Luther Vandross.
Your favorite dance song?
Oh, I have no idea. Pass.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Bacon.
Your favorite month?
December. That's my son's birthday month.
Workout or hit the couch?
Workout.
Steve White, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way that they can connect with you and do business with you. Feel free to leave all your social media handles and let them know how they can purchase your book.
The best place to go is stevewhitespeaks.com. It's my website, and it's not just a website to learn about the book. I think you could be inspired and educated. There you can find all my social media handles. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. And the book is available February 22nd, but it's available for pre-order now. Amazon. Remember, I talked about my biggest brand is Amazon. Go to Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble, but it's available for pre-order. And I hope our listeners were inspired to go buy the book, but also to buy the book for others that they believe in and share it with them, because I hope and believe that this will be a story that will inspire.
Thank you, Steve. That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.